be something beyond surviving. That's the energy of it. It's beyond. There's the what's next. Because also, as I started to delve into this world more, I really started to see, wow, people can get stuck at that survivor stage. Like they are there just treading around in the trauma again and again and again. I think for me, when I really moved my attention to the what do I actually do about it, and I began to think about one of the biggest shifts and pivots for me in my own healing that made the biggest difference was when I began to understand that trauma is an injury to the brain and to the nervous system. Well, injuries can heal and they don't take forever. And we don't have to live with an injury. So beyond surviving is trauma resolution and integration. When I say the final stage of recovery, what I mean by that is there's a time where not all of our time and attention and energy needs to be on learning or coping or strategizing or integrating or managing impact or even focus on the past. Yeah. And so we integrate, we process, and that brings us into the present. We're more present and future focused when we're beyond survivors.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Be Brave Project podcast. I am Chloe, your host, and today's episode is about something many survivors quietly struggle with, myself included. The idea that healing should be linear. That if we've done the work, we shouldn't still feel triggered, overwhelmed, or stuck. I'm joined today by Rachel Grant, creator of the Beyond Surviving program, sexual abuse recovery coach, and author of Beyond Surviving, the Final Stage in Recovery from Sexual Abuse. Rachel's work challenges the idea that trauma isn't a life sentence, and instead offers a framework that feels far more honest and humane. Just so you know, this conversation touches on child sexual abuse, so please take care of yourself whilst listening. Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate
to be here. Yes, thank you.
I'm so glad.
I'm realizing the way we phrase that now. You're right. We should have said trauma. Trauma is not a life sentence, but if we're challenging, it doesn't matter. Friends, folks, family that's listening, we're so glad to be here. We're going to get into it. We're going to break it all down. And I'm really just so glad to be here, to be having this conversation with you today.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. And thank you so much, because I reached out to you about a month or so ago. And I'm so glad that you're here. I agree with all of your work. And I think what you do is amazing. So I can't wait for you to be able to share it with everyone. So yeah, before we start, and for the listeners who may be new to your work and new to who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how the Beyond Surviving program came to be?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, it's nice to meet y'all. And right there, you'll hear the country accent. I grew up in Oklahoma. I am a country girl at heart, though I've lived in California now since 2004. So I'm this little mix of like gravy and kale. Now it's all pushed together. And, my journey, like so many, it's a wiggly one. I really, in my life, thought I was going to be a high school English teacher. Felt like that's where I was heading. That's the work that I was doing, the schooling that I was doing, the education that I got. But eventually, I was in 2006 going through a divorce. And I'd been in that relationship for 10 years. And it had involved, physical abuse and verbal abuse. And while during the course of that relationship, I had begun to take a closer look at the childhood abuse that I experienced. I was sexually abused by my grandfather starting around the age of 10, or at least those are where I have the clearest memories of it. And so I was trying to work on healing this childhood trauma while experiencing trauma and abuse in my life as an adult. So it was quite a mess, to say the least. And when I found myself in like my brand new apartment, here I am starting over, a lot of fear, like what's going to happen next? Where am I going? Am I going to be able to support myself? Different things like that. But I also had this really clear thought, Chloe, of like, oh my gosh, if I do not get my shit together, like soon with quickness, right, I am going to be spending the rest of my life in this same patterning. Right. Which for me, it just felt like a whole lot of surviving, a whole lot of like white knuckling it through my days. In some ways, I was thriving and doing well, but internally and emotionally and mentally, I was a hot mess. I was falling apart. And so that moment in life became just a transition. And I became super frustrated with the lack of support that I was finding around this, that was actually focused on what do I need to do? I had plenty of therapy that, where I could talk it up one side and down another. And at a certain stage in healing, that's super important and very helpful. But when I got to the place of, okay, how do I start to shift these behaviors? How do I shift these mindsets? And I would get some of those, oh, how do you feel about that? What would you do? Let's trust your intuition. Girl, I was like, are you kidding me? Why am I paying you? And so I, just being the stubborn redhead I am, was like, fine, I'll figure it out myself. And so I just started reading so much. And eventually I did my master's in counseling psychology. And along the way, I came across some like Dan Siegel's work and really started to understand the neuroscience of trauma. So things started to really click in. And honestly, I was really just trying to get myself together. But as I started to build out these frameworks, I think built beyond, because I have that background in education, I can think through the lens of like curriculum and scaffolding learning and what needs to come when. A few women in my community very bravely were my guinea pigs. And I said, let's see if this helps you. And it did. And so now here we are, 19 years later. And then this is the work that I do with people all over the country, all over the world.
That's amazing. I'm so sorry that happened to you when you were a child. And I'm sorry about the other abuse that you went through. No one should have to go through any of that. So firstly, I'm sorry that happened to you. And second of all, incredible that you have just flipped the narrative and you are fighting back and you've now become someone that helps other people. That's amazing. And so inspiring.
Yeah, it's satisfying to be able to take something and move it towards something that can be of benefit to others. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Beautiful thing when it's something shit, because let's face it, it is shit. Something so shit, and you've turned it into something positive and beautiful and amazing and helping other people. And it's great. So thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited about getting into it. Just touched on your own experiences. So how did your healing journey influence the way that you approach your recovery work?
So I think for me, what I found to be missing in the things that everything that I did played a little part and gave me a little piece and helped it, but it was never all of what I needed all at the same time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so for me, when I was developing and creating Beyond Surviving, I really thought about, first of all, being intentional about relationship and transparency. When I did that kind of first run, with a few women in my community, the feedback I got from them was, the skills and tools are necessary, helpful, important, absolutely. And over again, they would say, what I loved the most and what was most healing was when you were just so real about yourself. Right. When I would tell stories about like losing my shit over the Tupperware drawer, being disorganized, right? And going into complete dysregulation, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I actually went into coaching versus therapy. I wanted to have that space to be transparent where necessary, right? It's not about me, but where my story, my experience can be an illustration. And also we can just talk real talk. Okay, look, I know what that's like. I've been there. Let me tell you a story about that. And then let's get on to that. So that was a really key piece. And that has made such a big difference for me as I've just been able to share in that way. I think for me, when I really moved my attention to the what do I actually do about it? And I began to think about one of the biggest shifts and pivots for me in my own healing that made the biggest difference was when I began to understand that trauma is an injury to the brain and to the nervous system. And if you're spiritual and all, you might go into like the spirit, right? Mind, body, spirit. But I often think brain, nervous system. And that shift to name it that way was so important, Chloe, because I started to think, well, injuries can heal and they don't take forever. And we don't have to live with an injury. So for example, I thought, well, if I break my leg, I don't just sit down and go, oh, well, shit, I got to live with a broken leg for the rest of my life, I guess. All right. Like I do the things that repair, the bone and heal up and tweaky sometimes. Like I might need to, address it here and there. But ultimately, I'm not compensating and coping with it, all the time. And so that really shifted because then I started to feel less like I'm this broken thing. And instead, I've experienced an injury and I deserve to heal that injury.
I love that. I've read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and I understand that trauma showed up in a lot of different ways, and the nervous system and the brain and the body, and it's all there. But actually what you just said then, why should I have to sit with this? You wouldn't do it for any other injury. So I've never thought of it like that. So turning it onto that, yeah, why should we have to sit with this for the rest of
Yeah.
our lives? Yeah, absolutely not. I love
Right.
that.
It's a good shift, right? It's a very
Yeah.
good shift. And then the other piece of the puzzle, similarly, but I started to think about how an injury leads to symptoms, right? Or I would think, oh my gosh, like if I was in a room with like 5 people, we all had caught the same cold, and we're all gonna be there like kind of sneezing. Cause this is what I started to see too. Like, oh, like my challenge with trusting others. Oh yeah, you have that, you have that, you have that. Oh, this insecurity about my self-worth. Oh, you have that, you have that, you have that. Okay, great. So these symptoms, it's just like that. If you catch a cold, we're all going to sneeze. And we don't go like, oh, what's shameful and bad and wrong about me because I'm sneezing? We just go, oh, that's the symptom. But as we heal, right, as we recover, then the symptom goes away. Yeah. And so that also helps me to think about, yes, address symptomology. Yes, pay attention to those things. But if you actually just allow the nervous system and the brain to heal, a lot of that symptomology just takes care of itself.
Yeah, it does. It's even the therapy that I've done and the healing journey that I'm on, I can already feel the symptoms getting less and less. And
Mhm.
it is like that. And when you were saying catching a cold, and we all have those same symptoms, the feeling like crap, the guilt, the shame, it's all there, like you would have a common cold. And yeah, it's just working on each symptom and trying to get rid of it. Would you
Mm.
say that you get rid of it completely, or is it just figuring out how to deal with it?
Yeah, so it depends on the symptom, right?
Mm.
So, for example, if the symptom is inability to trust, we can completely eradicate that. We can completely build a framework that supports us in being able to take risks and being able to assess where somebody fits and how to pace ourselves in relationships. Shameful thoughts, shame-based thoughts, we can eradicate that. We can completely shift the paradigm of how we hold ourselves, feeling like we're to blame or at fault for the abuse, which leads to shame and all kinds of other things. Yep, we can eradicate that. Now, sometimes some symptomology, like, just getting you're reactive, right? Well, we're all human. So that's just a part of being human that things can pop in. But what starts to change there is the frequency. So we can decrease how often our nervous system and how sensitive our nervous system is to stress. Instead of being on this like up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down kind of roller coaster because your capacity is so small and your nervous system is so dysregulated. As you heal, you move into healthy nervous system where you just have more of an easy ebb and flow, and those spikes are few and far between. And then you can decrease like intensity and duration. So like if you move into an activation, you know kind of what to do and you're equipped to navigate that. So you can respond easily there.
And like you're saying all of this, I'm thinking, oh, I'm still very much haven't got there yet. I'm
Okay.
still, I am on my healing journey, and I think what we're talking about, it's not linear, is it? It's just,
Right.
it's constant. I definitely would say I'm quite reactive, and I am trying to work on it. But
Yeah.
for me, my reaction is triggered by anxieties or how I'm feeling in the moment. And that is one thing I am really trying to work on, especially because I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I get very triggered and very reactive with her, and I'm really trying to work on it. But it's really hard because it's so like, it's part of who, I think it's just part of who I am now. So I suppose my next question would be, what is the process of going from
Right.
someone that's like supposedly very reactive, like I suppose I am? How do you then eradicate that?
Okay. So first of all, think of it less as a part of who you are. Okay.
Okay.
So it's not your identity. It's not your beingness. Okay. Your brown eyes, right? Your heights, those are part of who you are. Yeah.
Mhm.
But reactivity is patterns. So you think about the nervous system as like a radio station or a radio frequency. And your
Mhm.
brain and your nervous system has been tuned in to that frequency for however long period of time. So it feels like yourself because, boy, it feels like I've been this way for so long. So we start to take it on. Yeah. But just like we can change the station on a radio, we can tune into a different frequency. Same with the
Mhm.
nervous system.
Okay.
And so that we go from a place where we have like high frequency or patterns, it's as Dan Siegel calls these ingrained states, or involuntary patterns that were laid down involuntarily, because by the way, y'all, like this pattern, you didn't go out and say, hey, please give me a dysregulated nervous system and like purchase it off the shelf. Like, it happened as a result of the experiences that you were not a voluntary participant in, right? You didn't choose, that was done to you. But then as adults, children can as well when they're given interventions early enough, right? But we're talking to adults right now. So we can voluntarily use interventions to change the frequency, to change the pattern. And so where we always start in Beyond Surviving is with that nervous system regulation piece and that foundation, and starting to build in more of a pause, being able to slow down. Because if we don't have that foundation and we try to do any of the further like trauma healing work, your system will literally kick you out.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at that. I don't want to talk about that. And so you'll rebel, or you'll get re-traumatized is also what can happen. Okay, so the how, like all the nitty-gritty details of that, there are steps, right? But with your nervous system, to repattern the nervous system is one thing is just to start to slow down. So like one of the first things I teach my clients is just a very simple tool called Let Me Think About It. I'm teaching it in the context of communication, but it translates over into your nervous system where instead of being fast to respond, a lot of people who've experienced abuse have what I call the automatic yes. Something happens. Sure. Okay. No problem. Yeah. Rings true. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is also the reactivity patterning that's showing up. It's just showing up in a different context way. So when we overhear in our communication, we start to slow down and we start to say, hey, let me think about that. Let me take a beat before I answer you, before I choose. Then that's also starting to teach your nervous system that our first response doesn't have to be the response, and that we can actually take a breath and take some space, because that spaciousness, that pause, is what then allows us the roominess to get in there and use an intervention or use another strategy that can help ground us in the moment, rather than go into the patterned reactivity and kind of choose a different pathway.
Okay. So I suppose when I'm feeling reactive and it's normally when I'm very stressed, or if something's happened, or I feel, so some days I just wake up and I'm very anxious. I don't know why. It's just the way that I just woken up and I'm feeling really, and you said that when you open the cupboard door and all the Tupperware falls out and you think, you just lose your shit.
Yeah.
And you think, why? I'm very much like that with my daughter. Would that just be taking a step back and just taking a breather and just taking a breath before I respond?
So one of the things that we think about is the window of tolerance, right? Our ability to handle stress. And boy, those little ones. I was a nanny for 9 years and I worked at childhood education before that. So I understand the little babies and how they can get up under your skin. Boy, they know just the button to push, or they're just doing their thing. They're really not doing anything, but it's just our capacity is low that day. And their fifth question about something, they're really not doing anything wrong. But boy, I really am tired of answering that question kind of feeling. Okay, so when you start to attune to your window of tolerance, which can shift and move based on if you don't get enough sleep, right? If you're having a high anxiety day, that decreases your window. And so the thing that yesterday wouldn't have pushed your buttons or wouldn't have dysregulated today can. Yeah. And so tomorrow I'm teaching a class on nervous system regulation and co-regulation for parents. And so I'm going to say, I don't know if you have that link. I'll make sure you have it, because there is a recording. So my international folks can listen back to the replay. And depending on when this goes out, if people want that, just reach out to me. I'll figure out a way to get it to you, replay or not. So anyway, you think about the internal system first, and doing those pulse checks with yourself and with your child can be really helpful. And then communicating that. Like, hey, you know what? You might not use the term window of tolerance with a little person. I teach a different like boiling point and freezing point. Like I am at like 50% close to my boiling point today. So you know what I need? We're going to take some, like, I used to call it peace and quiet time with my kids. Like, Nanny Rachel needs some peace and quiet time. Okay, so you go over there. I'm going to go over here. That's what we're going to do for the next 10 minutes, right? And then just lets me settle, right? So I'm kind of all over the place with the answer in that. But the long story short is, one, you're not a bad mom. You're not a bad parent. Like, we all have those moments where we get overwhelmed and reactive with kids. being able to slow down and just check in with ourselves and take a step away and take a break, and even just being able to communicate that. And then that teaches your children as well how to communicate that and how to attune to that for themselves too.
Yeah. I am pretty honest and open with her. And I tell her that it's like I've got a building block and it's going to tumble down. But
Yeah.
she's a sassy little 8-year-old. Sometimes she just doesn't really care. She's just so
Yep.
I'm going to try. I am going to try and take a step back and just maybe give myself a beat and just breathe before I react. And it's also not just with my daughter, it's with my ex-partner and lots of things. I just need to remember to just breathe before I answer.
Yeah. One of my clients would sing the ABCs. It sounds silly, but it's about a 30-second if you do it. So also like what's in the pause can help too. If you have something that you go to that actually creates a timeline for yourself. Some people do. I'm going to do like the times table. People who are math minded, not me. That's not me.
Yeah.
You put something in there because otherwise in the pause, you're just ruminating and you're getting ready for the fight, right? You can go straight into the pause. But when I'm on pause, let me tell you what I'm going to say. And you're thinking that rather than grounding. Yeah. And so doing something that just holds the space, like I don't get to respond until I've done the ABCs 3 times. That moves your attention and your energy away from the activation as well. Right. And then taking breaths there, that could be real helpful too.
That's a really good tip. I'm definitely going to do the ABCs. I think that's or even just counting to 20, just giving that time where I have to. They might think that I'm a bit strange, but I'm counting 1, 2.
Yeah.
In my head, but definitely going to try that. But so thank you for that. It's great tips on not being reactive. I'd like to move on to what I've called stage 1, victim. So can you describe what the surviving stage looks like in your model?
Mm-hmm. So this was, fascinating for me as I started to do this work and the years were going on and on. I started to see these patterns, and then I could look back at my own experience and kind of map it onto my own journey as well, that there are kind of these 3 stages: victim, survivor, and what I call beyond surviving. And so victim, that certainly can represent if you're still in an environment where you're being victimized, where you're being harmed or abused, whether a child or an adult. But what that mostly came to represent for me is the period in which a person is in kind of like the denial about what they experience, right? The pushing it away stage, like, good, that's no big deal. I mean, that was definitely me from like age 11 until like 18, 19. Nothing to see here. Everything's fine. I don't need to talk about that. I don't need to think about that. All this mess in my life surely has nothing to right? This is happening. But that's it. It's like the just pushing it away, denying. It can also just be in the minimizing. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that big of a deal. Like maybe you're acknowledging the thing, but you really minimize it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely I think most people, obviously I can't speak for everyone, but I think from experience, I definitely was in stage 1 from when it's finished until I disclosed back in 2017. I was there.
Yeah.
It's fine. This is the reason that I'm like this is because I'm like this. It's not because of what happened to me. That wasn't that bad. It's fine. It was ages ago. It was so long ago. It doesn't matter. And I was there for a very long time. And I think a lot of people are there for a long time. Definitely.
For sure. It's usually like a life moment that will make you face it. Kind of like for me with going through that divorce, was like, okay, even though I started a little bit before that, it really took that major moment.
Yeah, I think that definitely there's I don't even remember what mine was. I think I watched a program and I was like, oh, this has got too much now. And there was a lot of stuff in the press. So I think that was I just felt I couldn't really carry on. So what are some of the most common behaviors or coping mechanisms that get misunderstood in this stage, do you think?
Well, so a lot of people are coping by masking, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of pretending. Yeah. And the anger, because it doesn't seem, I think there's a lot of anger that's misplaced and misdirected, right? We don't know where to put all the because even though we're saying like this thing is not a big deal, all the hurt and all the feeling is still there. Mm-hmm. So the anger that is really about being harmed and abused is being transferred over here onto kids, onto relationships, onto workplaces, that kind of stuff. And so that often happens for people. Also, things like just being very isolated or feeling like you don't belong, you don't fit in. when we have that unresolved trauma, one of the messages of abuse is that you're now, you're different, you're set apart, there's something wrong with you. And so trying to kind of move through social circles can feel really challenging. So sometimes they're just either very awkward and don't quite know how to step in, or there's a lot of push and pull. Like I lean in, then I lean out, like I want to be in connection. No, I don't. I want to be connected. No, I don't. So there's all that because there's a lot of fear that sits around connection and vulnerability. Those are some that come to mind. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was me. That was all of me. And I think that's a lot of, I had a lot of anger as well. I had a lot of built up anger, specifically towards men. And I didn't really realize it, even though I was in relationships. I didn't like them, didn't treat them very well. And I didn't really understand why. It was, and obviously I now understand, but at the time, I just thought that they were the issue. So yeah, definitely that as well. Okay, so do we move on to? Because I'm just conscious of time. Moving on, do you want to touch on any more about the stage 1, the victim, or are you happy to move on?
One thing I want to say about that is just there's nothing bad or wrong about being in that stage. We just don't want you to stay there. And coming out of that, which is where we're heading next, when you're in that victim stage, it's just a place of starting to maybe expose yourself to certain conversations or resources. But I just want to name there's nothing bad or wrong. It's just a part of the process. We all go through that in denial, that moment of denial, or wanting it to not be true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, coming into that second stage of survivor. So there's the moment where we say, okay, I got to face this. I got to deal with this. That moment, and think of it like this bridge that takes you from victim to survivor and is called acknowledgement, right? And so you walk across the bridge of acknowledgement and you say, okay, here I am. And this is where we start to build a lot of awareness and understanding. I often describe this as where people become very book smart about trauma. They are reading the self-help books. They're getting all the lingo, PTSD and nervous system and all the triggers and all flashbacks and all that. And again, safe spaces where you can begin to just talk about and name and acknowledge. And this therapy can be a really great tool because, the therapeutic space is a very just kind of blank canvas where you are the painter. And so you are coming into session, kind of bringing in what's there for you and what's showing up for you and trying to test the waters with, sharing different things. And of course, hopefully getting some guidance and support and reflection there. But that stage is all about just kind of putting the pieces together. Oh, this is why I struggle with that. Oh yeah, this is how that works. This is tied into that thing. Starting to build some compassion for yourself as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a question that I really want to answer because I definitely felt this, but many survivors, myself included, say recovery felt harder than the survival. So when I was in that victim stage, even though I look back and a lot of stuff was bad and it was bad, but I found, not so much now, but when I first went into that survivor mode and I came forward and I was using all those terms and I was going through my healing journey, I really found it so much harder than I did when I was in victim mode. And so I just wanted to see, why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, we cannot heal what we will not name. But when we start to name it, then it's right here, right? When we're in the victim stage, it's back there. It's even what's impacting our life. And we know we're having struggle in our life. But the thing that is causing the struggle, we're not looking at it. Yeah. And so when we shift into the survivor stage and we bring in that awareness and acknowledgement, it is like saying, okay, yes, come to the front, please. Yeah. And so all the things that you have been suppressing and repressing around the actual experience are now right there. And that's one of the reasons why, right, when I developed Beyond Surviving, I thought about the order of operations and pacing, how to move things in a slow and steady way. But I always tell my clients, look, the first part of this is going to feel the worst. Yeah, because not only are you facing something that you had long, pushed away and suppressed and repressed, and so the feelings are coming in, you're also trying to do something about it or address it potentially. And so that's taking you out of your comfort zone as well. So that's why, it's a cliche, but it's a good one, break down to break through. And so I just constantly remind my clients, it's going to get better. We're not going to stay here always. But if you want the thing to actually resolve, yeah. See, we think, oh, if I just pretend it's not there, it'll be fine. I'll be fine. Everything will be fine. But it's actually through the naming and the acknowledging of it that it begins to lose its power, even though it doesn't feel like that right at the beginning. But if we stick with it, we stay in it, then yeah, it starts to even out.
Yeah, you're so right. Because even though it is there, we've been pushing it to the back of our brains and we haven't been acknowledging it. And then all of a sudden it's so there. And not everyone, but mine especially, I went straight into an investigation. So it was so there.
Doubly there.
It was
Yeah.
every day for nearly 3 years. And yeah, so I think all of a sudden I went from nothing to 100 and I felt, and also there's an element of what and obviously not everyone, but when he did go to court and he got convicted and he went to prison, he's still in prison and he got 9 years. Again, I felt like there was an element of, I should feel okay now. I should be fine because I got what I was wanting and I got justice. But oh my God, I didn't. It was actually up until sort of 2023, really, I was really bad. And I kept on thinking, but why? I'm going to therapy, I'm healing, I got what I wanted. And I know that's not really the right terminology, but I got justice. Why am I feeling like shit?
Right.
What is going on? But like you just said, keep going. It's the keeping going and working through it, which I have done. And now I feel like I am on the other side. And so I still have bad days. And there's still days. But it's got so much.
But it's not as on fire. The intensity is not as intense. And so that's the idea. Yeah. So it gets intense and then it evens out, right? And you have more capacity. You start to get things put into perspective, resolve. Yeah. And it's tough because I know for many people listening, there can be a lot of start-stop at that stage because particularly like sometimes people get their care and their support in that survivor stage isn't aligned. And so they get re-traumatized or they're asked to dive too deep, too fast. Yeah. And so they kick out. And I always say to my clients, it doesn't matter how many times you've started. It really does. Just keep starting. Yeah. And eventually one of those times, either it's going to line up just where you are in your own life, in your own capacity, or you're going to find the right mentor or framework that really works for you. But just don't give up because that's the place where people can start to despair. Oh, I tried this so many times. I've tried so many different ways. But yeah, if we just keep hopeful and keep striding towards those outcomes, yeah, we'll get.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people do panic and they think, oh, this is too much. It's too much. I want it to be quiet again. And I want to go be counterproductive, isn't it? It's just not. And then you'll get to a point where you want to try it again. And then I think, again, going back to healing isn't linear. Like it will constantly, there'll be back and forth. You'll go back and forth. It's not going to be one quick fix. Which I think is really, really important to say. One thing I really want to ask as well is what's happening neurologically when emotions and memories intensify? What's happening with that?
Well, okay, so activation. So on a neurological level, what's happening is that the part of your brain called the thalamus is constantly taking in data and information around us. So sight, sound, smell, sensations. And the thalamus is just processing on a very low level, like danger, not danger. That's all it's really looking for. Now, part of the struggle for those of us who have had prolonged trauma is that the thalamus gets broken, malfunctioning, and so it just starts to see everything as danger. And that's why we get anxiety and hypervigilance. That's one piece of it. Yeah, that's danger, that's danger, that's danger, that's danger, that's danger. Everything's danger. Okay, so you're like in the world like this. Okay. And so then as that thalamus is taking in that information, it's sending the information to the amygdala and to the prefrontal cortex. Okay, so the data goes to the amygdala very quickly. It's a short pathway. Because again, if the brain thinks you're in danger, we want fast action, keep this, organism alive. So the amygdala grabs that information, assesses the threat, and then is determining how to respond to the threat. And so it might kick you into fight, flight. It might kick you into freeze. It always freezes first, though, even if it's just for a little moment. But sometimes people, because again, if you have a thalamus that's constantly pinging the amygdala, and your amygdala is over here. Is that danger? Okay, what do we do? Is that danger? What do we do? Okay, is that danger? So then you're like popping around in your life. Anxiety, freeze, anxiety, numb, anxiety, dissociated, and then aggression, fight, right? Yeah, pushback, freeze. So that's the kind of way that activation shows up kind of emotionally in our life. And we feel like we're up on these roller coasters all the time. Now, the good news is that the brain likes backup systems. So the thalamus does send the information to the prefrontal cortex for like higher order processing. And then the medial cortex does, once it grabs the information, like, hey, there's been an error here, then it can send a signal back to the amygdala to override activation. But there's only one pathway for that, Chloe. Whoever created the brain, I feel like you could have done better. Okay. It's just, oh shit. I'm waiting. Medial, can you hurry it up already to tell this amygdala of mine that there's no bear in the room? Okay. But this is why we learn pause and we learn interventions, because as you learn to notice activation is happening, oh, thalamus amygdala is doing something in there. Okay, let me slow things down. Let me interrupt so that gives my system time to come in and orient me to the actual what's happening right now in the present.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a lot that your brain is doing in a split
Very
second.
short time. Yeah.
Very, very short time. But that makes sense, that doing that pause and just allowing your brain to catch up and go, it's fine. Yeah, that is where you are, like constantly fight, flight all the time. All the time. There's always danger. Yeah, that does make sense though. I find it really fascinating, the brain. I won't remember all of those things that you just said. So I'm going to have to go back to the amygdala and all of that. I won't remember that. But it's really, really interesting. It's really interesting to know.
And we start to understand it as just a function, a mechanism.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, okay. My brain is just doing my brain is supposed to do. But it might be doing it in a disproportional way, like it's doing it too much. So that's part of when I say heal the brain, heal the nervous system. We can retrain those parts of the brain. We can quiet down the thalamus. We can get the amygdala back to working and it being on when it needs to be on, but then off when we don't need it to be on. And so that's where we start to have that ebb and flow of the nervous system rather than that constant energy or feeling of hypervigilance or being frozen or dissociated.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for explaining all of that. It's really fascinating. And I think everyone's going to be at different stages. So I think this is really interesting for everyone that's going to be listening, whether they're in the victim stage or survivor stage or their stage 3, which is beyond surviving. When you talk about beyond surviving, what does that actually mean or not mean?
Yeah, thank you. The name of it comes from a moment in my own life where I was trying to put on a little event and I couldn't figure out the title for this event. And I was in this, community group thing planning. Anyway, and I told the person a bit about it, why I wanted to do it. And his reflection to me was like, well, Rachel, I'm not sure what to call the event, but you're such a survivor. You've been through so much. And for whatever reason that day, I really just kind of lost my shit on this guy. I was like, I do not want to just survive my life. Like that word became so distasteful to me in that moment. And I was like, I don't want to just survive. There has to be something beyond surviving. That's the energy of it. It's beyond. There's the what's next. Because also, as I started to delve into this world more, I really started to see, wow, people can get stuck at that survivor stage. Like they are there just treading around in the trauma again and again and again. And they aren't really completing. They aren't really integrating. And so beyond surviving is, I think of it as two things. One, it's trauma resolution and integration. When I say the final stage of recovery, what I mean by that is there's a time where not all of our time and attention and energy needs to be on learning or coping or strategizing or integrating or managing impact or even focus on the past. Yeah. And so we integrate, we process, and that brings us into the present. We are more present and future focused when we're beyond survivors. And we are then the second part equipped. I often think that another part of beyond surviving is like the growing up skills. We miss a lot when we're experiencing childhood abuse. So just understanding how to adult, how to build relationships, but all in all, how to have the skills and the tools that you need to address life as life comes, right? Because life will keep happening. There might be a new challenge that you face. You might lose a spouse. You might go through a breakup. You might have a pet die. You might lose a job, right? And so being in that beyond survivor mode is then how do I address that from like my empowered adult self staying connected to choice, and using the tools to help me process the feelings that come up and stay regulated in that. Yeah. But it's less and less about this thing that's happening right now is because of something historical. It's more there's something that it is happening that is new or that is challenging. Yeah. Does that distinction make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, no, it does, definitely. So how would you get from I'm just trying to work out like where I would fit into this. I don't know whether I'm still in stage 2 or if I'm in a bit of both. Can you be in a bit of
Okay.
both?
Yeah, you can be in all three, quite honestly,
Okay.
because you can be in denial about something or some part of the
Uh-huh.
abuse or the trauma or an experience. Like, I don't want to look at that one or that aspect of it. Yep, denial, push it away. Yeah. You can be just coming into some acknowledging and then noticing and naming something. And then you can be very fully resourced in something else and integrated and resolved there. Yeah.
Okay.
So while I lay it out in this linear way, it's not exactly that. Of course, my job as a coach is to try to support people in as much as possible, bringing them as fully into this place. But again, even if you have a new trauma, like something happens, like lose a job, you kind of go through the same process. You can't
Yeah.
go into denial. Can't believe this is happening. You might even be like, I don't even want to deal with this. I'm gonna lay on the couch for like a day or two or a week. And then, okay, like this is an issue. I've got to face it. I've got to work through it, start to talk about it, figure out what your plan is, and then take action. I think that's the other key thing. Part of understanding when you're in that beyond survivor step is when you're really in the what do I do about it? When your focus and your lens shifts from kind of awareness and understanding and really into resolution and action. That's one way to
Yeah.
kind of assess what's going on for you around any particular thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it's important to for people that are listening and people that have been through it to move away from the idea that it's a permanent destination? So there's always an element of whether you're in stage 3, you could, I suppose you've just touched on it when, if you've got a new trauma or something, that you're going to be moving back and forward from the different stages, because is that important for people to be aware of?
Yeah, I think for example, I would say like with when I think about my grandfather, that trauma is so integrated and resolved. A way to imagine it a little bit is like your life is this huge tapestry made up of all kinds of lived experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in kind of the victim stage, you pretend that the thread of trauma just isn't even there. That's what you're doing. Like, it's not there. And when you're in the survivor stage, it can become almost like the spotlight, like it almost becomes the whole tapestry. And beyond surviving when you're able to say, that is a thread among the many, many threads of my lived experience and who I am. But energetically, it all holds kind of the same. So, like, I grew up in Oklahoma. I was sexually abused. I love French fries, right? The energy, the tone around it is all the same. Okay. Now, what is true is that, like, let's say in my last relationship, something that showed up for me in that last relationship was that I was holding some narratives around being wanted. Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was in the context of that relationship and what was happening there that revealed itself to me. That narrative was kind of sitting there. And yeah, I can track that narrative back to the abuse. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But resolving that narrative for me in the beyond surviving stage, because of where I'm at, is not about going back and trying to do anything around the trauma. This is not the issue anymore. It's my own belief system that's sitting there. And that's what I need to look at. And that's what I need to shift. And that's what I need to resolve. And so that's what I use those beyond surviving tools to help me do. I don't need to go and dig around in the trauma again, because that's not going to tell me anything new. Does that, yeah?
Yeah.
Sense?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That does make sense. So I suppose, again, it's taking accountability for what's happening right now as well, and not going back and going, because, yeah, I suppose what happened to us is always going to be a part of who we are, but it doesn't have to define us, maybe. And that's, yeah.
It's not a definition. It's not an excuse. So I know that could be hard to hear. It was hard for me to hear the first time somebody said it to me. But you don't get to blame everything on your childhood trauma. I was like, but it was really true, right? Like, I have to have ownership of my life.
Yeah.
And my reactions, my responses, my thoughts. I think that's what so much of what I'm really supporting people in and what I really strive to help people know is that you're not at the mercy of these things. They were terrible. It should not have happened. It wasn't your fault. Of course, it informs and influences how you feel, how you think. And you're not at the mercy of that. You have so much power and opportunity to really put your hands on the steering wheel and then take charge in those moments. And when you see something coming forward, it does start to become your responsibility, right? How am I going to resolve that? What am I going to do about that? And what do I need to shift or change here so as to shift out of that patterning? Yeah.
Yeah. I think you said you can't blame everything on childhood, what happened to you, but I'm going to be completely honest now. Sometimes I do. And I think sometimes I do genuinely believe that it's because of that. And sometimes maybe I should take accountability of my actions now. But I suppose when I'm very much in it, because I'm very much in it at the moment because of the podcast that I'm doing and I'm taking on a lot and it's very present, very present. So I do feel like I'm in it, I'm there, and so it is affecting quite a lot of my mood and how I react. And I do sort of say, oh, it's because of what happened to me, and it's because I'm stressed and because I'm anxious and it's because of this and it's because of, and actually maybe I need to take a step back and go, okay, yeah, what happened to me was awful and it is there, but I also probably need to just realize that I am just who I am as well. And how I'm reacting is how I'm reacting, not because of what happened to me when I was 12. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I might add or change about that, Chloe, is just that, okay, so when you're immersed in the memory and a lot of rehashing, your nervous system is more front and center. And so that can lead to some of those spikes in anxiety, right? Or frustration or stress. And so the idea is when I say don't blame it, like what I'm saying is that now the invitation is, how do I want to respond to that anxiety, right? How do I want to take care of myself in this moment when I'm feeling anxious? Versus when we throw our hands up in the air and say, I'm feeling this way and I'm anxious because of that. And that's that. That's
okay.
Okay. Of course, you may be feeling anxious because of these experiences, but there's a next step. And that's what by not excusing yourself. Oh, I just talked to you terribly and, blew up at you, but it's because I am stressed out today and I have all this going on. Like, fine, those are some reasons and I'm still responsible. Yeah. Does that distinction help a little bit?
That definitely, I understood. Yeah, that makes sense. Again, taking accountability, like you're allowed to feel the way that you're feeling at the time, but not just going, oh, it's because of what happened to me, and that's why, and I'm not going to take accountability. And actually going, no, what happened to me was shit, and I'm feeling like crap, but I shouldn't be talking to someone like that, or reacting like that. Yeah.
And by the way, when you do that, you start to create the new patterning. You go, okay, I can feel anxiety. And my old MO is to feel anxiety and lash out. And by the way, I was an angry fucking redhead. Sorry, I don't know if we use the F word here. So I was still angry, right? And so my patterning had to shift. Yeah, I had to learn, hey, when that's coming up, where do I direct that energy differently? It's not that I don't get angry anymore, right? It's just how do I use that anger differently? And then that is where the patterning shows up differently. It changes, right? Even when I feel anxiety, I do something different now versus feeling at a loss or feeling overwhelmed by it or feeling paralyzed by it, like that. So feeling, again, like I just want you all, if we hear nothing else, to know that like you have so much power. And yes, sometimes we need teachers, we need mentors to show us that, right? And give us the way, but that we absolutely are not at the mercy of that old patterning. And I know we're getting so close to the end of our house.
I just want, it's more towards the end. It's just everything that you've said has been really informative and amazing. And I'm going to take away a lot from what you've said in the last hour. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening are going to take away a lot. Ben, thank you so much for explaining everything and being so clear on everything and giving your advice. One question I'd really like to ask before we end in 1 minute. If someone is listening and feels exhausted by healing, what would you want them to hear?
Yeah, take a break. F it. Go to the beach. Yeah. It is critical that we build in recovery timeouts. We cannot be navel gazing all day, every day. Yeah. And we need to remember that the purpose of healing is so that we can live our best damn life. Yeah. And so make sure you're mixing that in. Yeah. Take those recovery timeouts, take a break.
Self-care.
Yep.
Amazing. Amazing. Really, one last really quick question.
Yeah.
With all the stages that you've done, how do you give like a timeline on it and say, do you say to your clients, okay, we can get here in 3 months? Or is it very much, we're just going to see how it goes? Just so people don't feel that pressure, or that they should be there. And if they're not there, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it definitely varies. What I will say is that the program for my one-on-one clients is 8 months. And I think in that time, more often than not, I see people really reach a place of integration and resolution. For some people, they want to go through, again, it's like teaching a methodology. So it's very rinse and repeat. So then they'll complete Beyond Surviving. They'll say, you know what, there's this other trauma or there's this other experience that feels a little charged still. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to repeat the steps of the Beyond Surviving method. But now that they've onboarded all of that, it can happen within a week, a day, right? It can happen very quickly. New things pop up. You use the same methodology again to help you process through and not get stuck in it. But the bottom line is no, nobody should ever feel shamed or I'm doing it wrong or it's taking me too long. It takes the time that it takes for sure. But I've seen really amazing results in just the 8 months that I work with my clients.
Amazing. Thank you, Rachel, so much for being here. And I'm sure people will take away a lot from this, because I certainly will. If people want to find you, can they just find you on, like, if they want to sign up, or do they contact you on Instagram? Have you got anything that I can give to people at the end of the podcast?
Oh, for sure. Let's give them all the stuff. Yeah. So my website is step one, RachelGrantCoaching.com. When you go there, you can read more about the program. You can access some of the resources. At the very bottom of that, the homepage, you can click a link where you can get the checklist about the 3 stages. That's going to go into a little more detail about each of the stages, what kinds of support you need at each stage so that you're in alignment, and also kind of the goals and intentions of each stage. So that can help you figure that out. If you're curious about working with me one-on-one, you can apply for a consultation. The link to that is all over the website. It's, you can find it easily. And then we'll set up a time and we can talk and we can explore that. But also, again, tap into the resources. There's the Facebook group. There's a monthly drop-in donation-based group for my international folks. It's sometimes the wee hours of the morning, but some of my UK folks come in and join anyway. There's the podcast, all kinds of things there. So yeah, tap in and, reach out to me. I'm so here and happy to be a resource and support however I can be.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I'll also link all of that at the end so people can quickly tap onto it if they want. So Rachel, thank you so much. It's been
thank you
so
for your
wonderful.
vulnerability and sharing. Yeah, oh my gosh, such a good conversation. I'm so glad we connected. Yay.
I know, me too. And thank you for taking the time to come on. I really appreciate it, and I've taken away a lot, and I know everyone else will take away a lot. So thank you. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. It's the evening for us now, so I'm gonna go and have a cup of tea on the sofa. Can't wait.
Enjoy.
Thank you so much.